So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about globalization in Flutter, key concepts about internalization and localization. But first of all, who I am, this is me. I'm Alba Torres Rodriguez, and I'm a software engineer at Sepura. You can find me in Medium and in LinkedIn as well. The agenda for today is talking a little bit about the key concepts in globalization, internalization, and localization. I will be talking in a project where I work at Delivery Hero, that we had one code base and we shipped for 4 different branches, the issues that we encountered doing that, and the solutions. But first of all, let's do a game, and please raise your hand if you know this symbol. Okay, good, thank you. And this one? And this one? Much less people. Okay, so this is a Turkish lira, and it's designed for Turkey, for the currency. And according to ChatGPT, there's 180 different currencies, the whole world. So this is a topic that is very important if you want to do a globalized app. Also, another important topic is supporting different type of directionality with the text. Spanish is left to right, but for example, Arabic is, left to right, and Arabic is right to left. But so that we are all in the same page, what is internalization? So in Wikipedia says that internalization is the process of designing a software application so that it can be adapted to various languages and regions without engineering changes. What is localization? And localization is the process of adapting software for a specific region or language by translating text and adding local specific components. But really, what is all of this? In simple terms, I would say that internalization is using variables instead of hard-coding text. And localization is passing the correct strings to these variables for certain locales. All this together, plus handling different directionalities on the languages, plus different time formats, and different currency formats, this is what we call globalization. Now I want to talk a little bit about the project that I mentioned before. So 4 months ago, I was working at a company called Delivery Hero, and it was a food delivery app that had more than 34,000 employees, and it was used in 70 different countries. So the project that I want to talk about is the merchant app. Basically, it was a Flutter-based app that we built for the restaurant partners. We ship for Panda Merchant in Asia. We ship Foodora Merchant for Austria, and it was the relationship between the restaurants and the merchants. Pedidos Ya in Chile and Talabat in the Middle East. So all of this, it was done with one code base. And as you might predict, this we had a lot of challenges by doing so. So the first of all, it was that we needed to support different languages. We also needed to support different directionalities with our text. We also needed to support different currencies, and we needed to support different brandings and UIs for each locale. So how did we do that? The first thing that we did, it was supporting multiple languages. So the main challenges, it was that we had to support 5 different languages. And we also had to have in mind that if, for example, the translations were not able to load because of network issues or server downtimes. First of all, we needed to structure our localization system to accommodate multiple locales. So what we did, first of all, it was to set the localizations, the label session, sorry, and it was a map between the locale and the language name, the specific language name, sorry. So the local ID is basically this that we see here, and it's a combination where it's a language or a language and region combination. And the label is the name of the language that we see in the settings or in the UI of the app. This one, English, it represents the global fallback language that we have in our app. And for example, this one, EN_HK, it would be English for the region of Hong Kong. Then we supported the supported locales, which is basically the locales that are available for each language. So for example, in here we see that the German is supported in Austria, in Germany, in Switzerland, and in the US. Then we set the country locales, which is the locales that are available in the specific country. So here we say that English and Arabic are supported in Qatar, which is QA. These three things gave us a source of truth for all of the languages that we supported. Then each language had its own JSON file, which it was simple, a key value pair combinations, where the key represented the text that it was a string in the app, and the value it was its translation. So these keys, it was what we needed to be localized in the different languages and the different regions. So in this slide, we can see EN_CL, which it would be English for Chile, and in here the E_80, which it would be German for Austria. This structure allows us to support multiple languages and multiple translations in a very structured way. And we call them hard-coded translations, where we push them all in a central repository. So this is more or less how we work, developers, and we had the base code of the merchant app, and then we push all the hard-coded translations in this repo, centralized. Once this is done, we use a tool called Weblate, that it was basically a way to manage our translations, and it was the bridge between the translations and the values and our translators. So for example, when there was a key that it was needed to be translated, the translators were notified, and they would manually translate the strings in the respective languages. Once all of this is done, the translations were done, they were synced back into our GitHub repository. Once all of this was synced, we exported it in a Google Cloud bucket, and this was our remote source for our code. With this approach, what we could do is that anytime that we wanted, we could fetch dynamically all these translations. And for example, after, what we did, it was that during the build pipeline, Bitrise, it was fetching the latest translations and including it into the app builds. And before the release, we had something that it was called code freeze, where the app fetches the latest translations from the Google Cloud. So we have them again hard-coded in our app. So why we did that at the end, it was because we wanted the hard-coded translations to be our fallback case. So we had a lot of translations. How the app decides which translations to use. So in the runtime, the app fetches the translations from the Google Cloud bucket, and once they are fetched, they are cached locally. If the remote translation fails, what we do is use the cache translations that we just did. And if this also fails, then we go back to the hard-coded translations. In the remote case that these three options as well fail, then we show the key itself. This was supporting multiple languages. What we did for the second issue, that it was supporting left to right and right to left. The main issue, it was that we needed to support English, Spanish, and German. That was left to right, but also we needed to support right to left languages like Arabic. You can see, for example, in here how difficult this is, because in the case of the Arabic, the text aligns right instead of left, and the icons and the buttons, they mirror each other. But luckily, Flutter allows us to build in a support with bidirectionality layouts, and it makes it very easy to change left to right and right to left. And we use this class up directionality, where we forced that if the brand is Talabat, which uses Arabic, then we force them to always use right to left. Otherwise, so for Pedidos Ya, Foodora, and Foodpanda, left to right. So this allows us to apply the direction dynamically based on the brand settings instead of, well, it was centralized. Then when we set a directionality that wraps the entire app, and so the text follow the correct order the whole time. With this approach, well, we didn't need to go to every widget and check if it was okay, but it was all handled from the brand and centralized. The third issue that we had, it was supporting multiple currencies. So we had global regions that they had different currencies. So we needed to ensure that, for example, a user that was in Austria see the prices in the app in euros, and a person in Chile in Chilean pesos. To solve this, we rely again on the entity config file, where we set the region's configurations and the currency format and code for each brand that we had. So each locale has its dedicated entity config. And for example, this one, it was for Talabat in Qatar. And we can see that the format locale ID is AR_QI. The code, the currency code is CAR, that is Qatari Rial. The country code, and we show a more detailed currency format in this case. This would have been great if we had silk classes, for example, but it's a feature that came out in Dart 3, and at the time that I was working in this project, this didn't exist. So this is why we did it like this. Once we had the entity config for each locale, we needed this utility class for showing every price in a correct format. So based on the user's locale and the currency. First of all, what we did, it was check if the amount was null. If it was null, we return a fallback string. If the locale doesn't exist, then we fall back in the default one, where it was English Austria. If the currency code is blank, we set the default one with the currency code ISO 4217, which provides us a standard format for all the currencies. So for example, USD is always dollars, EUR is always for euros. And then we decide if we show a simple or a more detailed currency format. Then, using the intl package from Flutter, we get the currency symbol for each entity. So this getter, what it does is fetch the currency symbol depending on the selected locale, and it pulls it from the locale, in this case, currency format local ID, and the name with the currency code ISO 4217. So in this case, because we have the currency code AT and the locale EN80, which is English for Austria, we are seeing the euro. This is the end of the third problem. The fourth problem that we had, it was supporting different brands, because we had one code base, but 4 different brands. So 4 different logos, different colors, different secondary colors, and we needed to meet all of the requirements in the Figma files. So what we did, it was structuring it with the brand config file and the entity config. So again, we follow a similar approach, because we've seen that we could handle a lot of things that were region-specific settings in the entity config. So in this case, we did the same. Each entity had its entity config file, and then we could apply the UI that we desired. So the brand config file, as you can see, it had everything: the name, the app name, the brand color, the colors, logos, API paths, everything. And we did this approach for Talabat, Foodora, Pedidos Ya, and so on. this brand config and entity config, they were always initialized when the app starts, and they were always depending on the entity ID. So we use this to change dynamically the configurations of the app. And also, entity config uses a singleton pattern, what it means that only one instance it can be in the app all the time. So, for example, if we are here in FP_HK, that means that we are only going to see the configurations for Hong Kong Food Panda. Also, the init method depends on this, the entity ID, and it's the first instance. For example, if it's true, it replaces the current instance with it replaces current instance with the new one, and if it's false, it keeps the last one. With this approach, we did one code base, 4 different brands UI waves. This is how we did it. This is our approach. Yeah, it's not the one that you have to follow, but it worked for us, and we ship these 4 apps in one code base that serve millions of users. So I hope you like it, and please, if you have any questions.
Yeah, so you showed all the JSON config files with the translations. I was wondering if you have like some compile time checks that all the translations are in place, because you can download something is missing. And what is the strategy if you're not finding for a specific locale?
Yeah, this was done in our release process, so we had a lot of Q&A and a lot of downfalls for checking that, and yeah, we would do a hot fix if this happened.
So you have
Mhm. Yeah.
Like the first time you add a string there, does it stay like this forever, or do you anytime like sync back the translations that have been updated in the web later on?
Yeah, so the hard-coded translations, they are the ones that we fetch after from the web late. They go back into our repo, our central repo, and this gets updated every time. So anytime that you do a remote fetch and it's successful, then it gets cached. And when it gets cached, it gets hard-coded into the app.
What was the reason you decided to store JSON files in the separate repo? Because the application is totally out of sync with translations.
First of all, because we needed to use a third managing tool, like for example, Weblate, to do these translations with real people that they were doing the translations like manually. And we found out that we thought about like ARB files as well, but in our case, the people that were doing the translations were not techie people, and they found a little bit difficult to follow. So this is why we stuck with JSON. We could have done a conversion between ARB and JSON, for example, but we didn't see that this in our flow would gain anything for us.
So how will you guarantee that the application repository translation is not out of sync?
Because every time that it was updated, we were, first of all, with Bitrise, we would fetch it in the Google Cloud bucket, and then fetch it again to the build tabs that were the ones that actually were going to get released later. It would be great if we could do, for example, Google Sheets API, because the translators were very good with that, and they were comfortable with that. But we didn't do that, and actually this project doesn't exist anymore. It closed down, the merchant app team, so that's why we didn't do more iterations in this case.
Any spell check tools inside the GitHub pipeline?
Not inside the GitHub. It was the translations who did, the translators who checked everything.
Right.
Yes, they can. Thank you.
Another question. I was wondering if you're doing like the plurals. How do you manage different languages? You need to insert the number somewhere, and
there was a package that we were using to do that. I will again check it and go back to you with this. Cool. Thank you.